What's going on, Reds fans, and what's going on, baseball fans? Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast here on this Monday afternoon. Got an episode out for you. Kind of had a busy day. This offseason, we're going to get back to the whole being ready for you in the mornings thing. Just, kind of everything got crazy here on this Monday. We're back tomorrow in the morning. Today, I want to tell you about why you should be rooting for the Houston Astros in this World Series. I don't think it's all that complicated either. And we've also got some news, which I think most of us understood, but they're saying that there's going to be a lockout starting on December 2nd. Going to break all of that down for you here on the Locked On Reds podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are in the day before the World Series, with everything being set with the Braves and the Astros getting set to square off for a ring. Dusty Baker's got a shot to win himself his first ring of his career, his long, illustrious managerial career. But we'll get to that in a minute, because new news, as I was preparing for today's show, dropped. And new news, yeah, we're going to say that a whole bunch. Apparently, reported by ESPN, pretty much everybody expects a lockout to happen starting December the 2nd. December the 2nd is when the current CBA expires, provisions of which include the luxury tax threshold and all of this other stuff. It ends on December 2nd. And there's been nothing but infighting and bickering amongst both sides when it comes to what's next. You're talking about different things like salary floors, and you're talking about the possibility of a salary cap, which is hush, hush, whisper, whisper, because the Players Association wants nothing to do with that. And you're also talking about getting rid of service time issues and things like that. There is so much that needs to be figured out between now and the eventual result of a brand new CBA. The problem with that is both sides are so far apart, it's not funny. And that is why no one really is surprised by the news. When it comes to a lockout, and I have this wonderfully tasteful picture of Great American Ballpark with a gate in front of it. This was something that I think most fans and most people who follow the game on a daily basis knew was coming. Hopefully, it's not going to last very long, but we are talking about two sides that are just absolutely at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. When you're talking about any issue involving this CBA. There were things that came out about a month ago of Rob Manfred making the statement that, the relationship with the players union has never been stronger, and things like that. It was all just horse manure and total window dressing to get everybody just distracted from the fact that this is going to happen. And the unfortunate thing is this report coming out the day before the World Series. So now we're looking at this World Series as the last baseball we're going to have until blank. And there's going to be so much. I'm going to be covering this quite a bit this offseason. I was prepared for this. I'm ready for this. And if you weren't ready for this, I apologize. But this is going to be a very dominant news thing when it comes to baseball this offseason. Now, also, here's one thing that I want you to understand. Whenever I am presenting news and whenever I'm looking at this, I may have my own slant and my own feelings as to how this is going down. The ultimate big picture when it comes to anything regarding this lockout, regarding these CBA negotiations and all of this other stuff, I just want baseball. I just want to be at Great American Ballpark come next March 31st, I believe is what opening day was. But anyway, mine's clouded from all of that because of this. It's like when Yoda was just like, impossible to see, the future is. And I don't know why I gave him a low voice there just now. But anyway, whatever. Impossible to see the future is when it comes to this lockdown. And it's going to be frustrating. You're going to hear people advocating for owners. You're going to hear people advocating for players. All I want you to understand is when I'm talking about the news and I might be giving a slant one way or the other, I just want baseball. That's all I want. The result, the end result, however we get there, the details involved, give me baseball. That's all I want. But there's going to be plenty of questions surrounding that, as the lockout reportedly will begin on December the 2nd, which is typically when, we'd be talking about Reds Fest. We'd be doing that, which that was canceled way back in the past, pushed back to next year. But we're also talking about the winter meetings and stuff like that. Not going to take place until the CBA is figured out. Plus, this also has a very localized impact, namely one Nick Castellanos. Nick Castellanos opt out really hinges a lot on what's going to happen with this lockout. And like it or not, it's not going to be a scenario where they can just go in and be like, "Oh, we're going to let you." I don't know. Maybe they let him delay it. Maybe that would be a good faith way of doing things. But let's be honest, the owners, the players, everybody involved in Major League Baseball runs it like it's a business. And probably wouldn't be super good business tactics to be rewriting contracts. And in the contract, there's a finite day that will happen before December the 2nd that Nick Castellanos must decide to exercise the opt out clause in his contract or not. And because of that, he would then become a free agent at a time when nobody will be signing. I would venture a guess to say that not one free agent will be signed until a new CBA is concocted, until it's come up with. I think that if you approach it from a fantasy baseball in terms of fantasy baseball, you would want to jump on players during that period and try and get a contract done with them so that they're on your team. But like Brian Cashman was quoted in the ESPN report saying, "We have no idea what our budget looks like." And that's the Yankees. The Reds have already told us. The Reds tell us that every year. They don't know what their budget looks like. They got to figure out how much money they have to spend on players. The Yankees are saying that. And if the Yankees are saying that, nobody's going to be out there signing players. Period. I just don't see, and that is frustrating from Nick Castellanos' perspective because this contract was really kind of geared in his favor whenever he signed it. The only problem was this impending CBA and the lockout and all this other stuff. So, yeah, it's got a very huge impact on whether or not he will use that opt out. I still kind of figure that he will, but it's going to be a little bit more of a gamble than I'm sure he was expecting it to be. And I kind of hate that for him personally. I think that that's a pretty crappy thing for him to have to go through after having such a great year and having the expectations that he should be to cash in on that performance. But again, this is literally just the report that the lockout is forthcoming. Everybody knew this was happening. There are no new details as to any sort of movement toward a new CBA. Again, we're talking about a myriad of details, probably enough details and enough things that everybody is just at odds against that it's going to make some certain bills in Congress and different things that the government is working out. It's going to make that look kind of easy to understand based on what this CBA is going to look like. So we're going to be covering all the details here on the Locked On Reds podcast as they come out. I will be talking about them as soon as they come out. So for right now, the report is a lockout's coming. So just get ready for it. All right. Enough of that nonsense. Let's talk about some fun stuff. Let's talk about the World Series because we still have baseball, at least for somewhere between 4 and 7 games. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Before I tell you about that, though, I want to tell you about how you can get all of your entertainment under one television screen and under one profile. Let's be honest. How many profiles do you have? How many streaming services are you already subscribed to? Stop all that. Bring it all under one roof and one television screen with DirecTV Stream. Check them out today at directv.com and find the right entertainment package for you. They've got everything between live sports, television, and movies. They've got reality TV, news TV, all of that great stuff can be found with DirecTV Stream. You can customize your package and bring everything under one television screen. Stop worrying about how many devices you're bogging down your internet with, and stop worrying about how many passwords you have to remember. You only need one with DirecTV Stream. Check them out today, directv.com. Contents vary by package, and you got to have a compatible device to get DirecTV Stream. All right, so the World Series is set, and this is the Atlanta Braves are the reason that even when the Reds were in the midst of their struggles, we just said all they got to do is make the postseason. All they got to do is get to the dance, and then we see what happens. Because if you look at the stats of the Braves throughout the entire season, they were just okay. In fact, for much of the year, they were under 500. It just so happened that they played in the NL East, and the NL East wasn't a great division and all this other stuff. Whatever. That doesn't matter now because they're at the World Series. This is not a situation where you can say, well, they benefited from a bad season. They went through the same playoffs as everybody else. They beat the Dodgers. They beat the Brewers, the two teams that I would have figured would have been in the NLCS. But here we are. Now you look at the Astros on the other side of the field, and their lineup has been phenomenal all year long. Nobody scored more runs than them in the major leagues. But their pitching has come up big in situations where you either didn't expect it to, or you thought this would be the moment that the Astros would collapse. This would be the moment where Dusty Baker ends his postseason run, and here we are. He's in the big dance with the Astros, and the World Series is ready to go. But again, like I said about the Braves, they had the longest odds to win the World Series when the postseason started. Doesn't matter. When the playoffs begin, it's like a whole nother season. And that's something that I'm going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to talk a lot tomorrow. So, got a great guest, recurring guest, friend of the podcast, Bronson Arroyo, will join us tomorrow on the podcast. We're going to talk about the playoffs. He's been through plenty of them. We're going to talk about Dusty Baker. That was his favorite manager that he got to play for, and what this means to Bronson as a friend of Dusty's and things like that. We're going to break all of that down tomorrow with Bronson. But when you look at the idea that if you just make it to the playoffs and then everything gets thrown out the window and you pretty much start a brand new season, this is what we're talking about. The Braves have had amazing at-bats all postseason long. They've been extending them. They've been just a drain on opposing pitchers. And they just went through a series with the Dodgers where the Dodgers largely did the same thing. It's just the Braves out at-batted them. Whatever. I should have come up with a better word there. But yeah, they had better at bats than the Dodgers did. Now, the question will be, how does the Braves pitching staff that had to go through that series with the Dodgers handle the just strength of the Astros, which is their lineup and everything they can throw at them? That's going to be the interesting thing for me. But when I look at this series, I think it's a pretty easy pick for me to root for. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But first, I want to play for you this because Locked On MLB, I got the chance to co-host the postseason preview. Sully did a World Series preview. He talked with Jake Mastriani, who's sitting in to talk Braves. He's from the Locked On Brewers podcast, but he's also a big Braves fan. Kind of funny how the Braves beat the Brewers and then he starts talking Braves, but whatever. I'll have to ask Jake about that. And then he talks with the Astros guys as well. They're all 4-in-1 podcast previewing this World Series, and it was a phenomenal podcast. You got to check out the whole thing. But here's a clip because Sully is a noted Astros hater, and most Astros fans on social media don't like him. Though you can make the argument that unless you're just friends with the person already before you start following them on Twitter, you probably have some reason that you dislike them because it's Twitter and everybody dislikes everybody. But this was a great preview, and Sully gave his pick, which probably surprises most Astros fans.
I want Astros fans and Astros Twitter to listen to me very, very closely because you've said bad words to me and I've said some bad words to you. Okay. I am picking the Houston Astros to win the 2021 World Series. And Eric, you're going to be mad at me. You wasted your money. I'm picking them in 5. And I'll tell you why I'm picking them in 5. I think we are going to say after a lot of the games, it was a lot closer than the final score indicated. I don't think the Braves have faced an offense like this. And I think that there's going to be some of those pitchers who may be a tiny, weeny bit gassed, and suddenly Correa hits a 3-run bomb. And that 3-2 game becomes a 6-2 game. And I think that's going to happen more than once in this series. What I personally want is Game 7 to go 19 innings and have it be the fill-in-the-blank game. And people walk around like, oh, man, hey, I didn't expect that. That's what I want. What I think will happen is I just think, and again, Jake, don't take this the wrong way. This is not me Believe me, this is not me as an Astros fan. This is me thinking, I just don't think the Braves have faced an offense this good.
Yeah, I tend to agree with him. I think the Astros lineup is just bomb when it comes to this World Series, and I'm rooting for the Astros. I think I'm picking them to win. I don't know that it's going to be 5. I think that this goes 7, just because those Braves at bats are just going to terrorize Astros pitching. But overall, I think that this is going to be a very fun series to watch. I'm looking forward to watching every minute of it starting tomorrow night. And I'm going to tell you why I'm rooting for the Astros, because you're probably saying, Jeff, the Astros cheated. I believe in redemption, and I also believe in Dusty Baker. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute. Before I start talking about that, though, I got to tell you about Built Bar. You got to grab one right now. You got to go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and get a Built Bar. If let's do the whole thing. I like to do this sometimes when we're comparing players, where you strip away the name, you strip away the picture, you just give them the stats. Let me give you the stats. We're talking like 130 to 150 calories, up to 18 grams of protein, and less than 4 grams of fat and less than 4 grams of sugar. Those are the kind of numbers that you pick all day. Those are the kind of numbers that you can build a lineup around. That's what Built Bar offers. And they've got phenomenal flavors like Cherry Barcia. They've got the amazing cookie dough chunk, which, it's creeping up for me. Cherry Barcia is my favorite, but cookie dough chunk, right there. You've also got great fruit flavors like strawberry and orange and raspberry and great things like that. You've got double chocolate, much more peanut butter brownies and mint chocolate brownies and things like that. Check them out today at built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll save 15% off your next order. You can get a mix box with all the different flavors that Built Bar has to offer. You can pick 3 flavors and get 6 bars of each flavor, or you can get 1 box of your favorite flavor, i.e., Cherry Barcia. Use that promo code LOCK15 today and save 15% off your next order of Built Bars at built.com. All right, so I'm stoked. All right, the World Series. I know that there's some people that want to say this and that. Well, the Astros cheated. The Braves are the Braves, and they've had this whole thing, and then whatever. I get it. I understand it. If you want to be that way, you can. I'm not. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. The Braves have rallied from being the least likely World Series champion to being one of 2. And you've got the Astros with Dusty Baker, who all year long they've had to overcome different obstacles, whether it's injuries, which most teams have to do anyway, or the fact that everywhere they go, they get booed out of the stadium because of the whole cheating scandal. And while I like to joke about it, I think that redemption is a thing that we should celebrate in this society. Speaking of redemption, do you remember this guy? Do you remember Dusty Baker as the Reds manager? Do you remember how successful they were? Do you remember us making the playoffs, seeing the Reds in the playoffs, winning the division a couple of different times? That was great, wasn't it? Now remember the time when we all wanted him gone, including myself. I was among this throng of people. Remember the time when we said, yes, Brian Price would be a way better manager than Dusty Baker. Say what you will about the roster he was handed after Dusty left. Well, we could probably debate that for a while. Don't think Brian Price was a better manager than Dusty Baker. In fact, Bronson's probably going to tell me that whenever I talk to him tomorrow, because Dusty was Bronson's favorite manager. But when I look at Dusty Baker, I look at a dude, and he had a great interview in The Athletic that Ken Rosenthal had with him. And he said that, I've been doubted everywhere. I've been fired from jobs that I won at. I've been let go from teams that we were really, gelling together, and we made the playoffs and we were doing stuff. We just couldn't quite get to the big dance. Now he's there. Now he's in the World Series. And it's not his first trip to the World Series, but it could be his first ring. Like Sully said, and even if you go watch the entirety of the Lockdown MLB World Series preview, even Jake, advocating on the Braves side, believes that the Astros will win in 7 games. The Astros are the favorites in this series. If you go to betonline.ag and you see those odds, I believe they're like minus 140 last I saw. So they're the favorites, but it's not by much. This is going to be a fun and close series, but I'm rooting for the Astros. I'm rooting for them not because I'm okay with cheating or anything like that. I'm not rooting for them because of any ill will toward the Braves or anything like that. Although whenever the Reds play the Braves, it just, I don't, we've talked about this before on the podcast. If you're brand new, by the way, thank you for watching and listening. But we've talked about how it just seems like the Braves have the Reds numbers. I mean, I hate that, but I don't hold that kind of grudge whenever they're playing another team. When I look at this World Series, it's going to be a lot of fun, but I'm rooting for that ring for Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker with 13 regular season wins next year could be the first African-American manager with 2,000 wins. That's pretty awesome. He's also got great accolades of division titles and pennants and things like that. He doesn't have a World Series ring. Pretty sure if he wins a World Series, he's a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame. At least I think that's how that works. But I would imagine that if he were to add a World Series ring to his resume, it'd be hard to keep him out. And he said in that interview that's not like a huge deal to him because he knows his own career and he is happy with the things that he's accomplished, but he wants that ring. But he said he's not stopping with one. He's not retiring after this World Series, come hell or high water, because he's going to manage next year. He's going to get to 2,000 wins, and he says that it's even more than 2,000 wins. He wants 2 World Series rings. So I'm pulling for Dusty. I want to see Dusty Baker get that World Series ring, and I'll be rooting for the Houston Astros in this World Series. Let me know who you're rooting for at 513-549-0159 or hit me up on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. And you can also hit up the show at Locked On Reds as well. Because when it comes to this World Series, we're looking at 4 to 7 games. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. So we're probably talking about 5 to 7 games of amazing baseball before we have to just dive into our lead topic today, talking about the CBA and the fight between the players union and the owners. I want to be happy for Dusty. I want to watch this World Series and see him get the win because I felt like Cincinnati is one of the many teams in the many cities that did him wrong. And it's time for him to put on a ring and celebrate a career of managing that should absolutely see him in Cooperstown. That's why I say, go Astros. And that's going to do it for today's podcast here on the Locked On Reds podcast. No, not a whole lot of Reds-centric stuff. We kind of brought Dusty Baker around talking about the Reds and things like that, but we're going to continue our coverage of the Reds this entire offseason right here on the Locked On Reds podcast, talking about all the many things they've got to answer, as well as all the many questions that the league and the owners and the players have to answer to figure out if we're even going to get baseball next year. I think we will, but it might be delayed, but yeah, whatever. That's for another day. Also, like I said, tomorrow on the podcast, Bronson Arroyo will join me. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're not going to want to miss it. That's right here on the Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure you're following me on your favorite podcasting app and you're subscribed right here on YouTube. But that'll do it for us today. I'll talk to each and every one of you tomorrow.